thank you all for joining us. Got a few more people that I want to pull up as they come in, and then we'll dive right in. This is the second one of these we've done. I'm calling it the the Lightning Power Hour. Asterisk, actually 90 minutes long. We'll see whether we do these every Monday or on a different schedule, but essentially there is an incredible amount of excitement and development happening on the Lightning Network, which is a layer 2 technology on top of Bitcoin, which is layer 1 and represents sound money. And I wanted to start doing these because it's an incredibly exciting time to be involved. So we've got a pretty amazing group of people who are up here today speaking. I'm kind of a well-intentioned and educated enthusiast, but the other people on the stage are really experts in the Lightning Network, and so wanted to just kick off a casual conversation about this and really dive into some of the cool stuff that's happening. So Jestopher, who has a cool picture of an old dude shooting lightning out of his eyes. I believe that's Thomas Jefferson. Am I correct there, Jestopher?
That is that. Yeah, that's Thomas Jefferson.
Outstanding. Jestopher is the co-founder of an incredible website that all of us that are running routing nodes rely on heavily. It's called Amboss.space. And it really aggregates a ton of the information that's represented on the Lightning Network in a really intuitive interface. And it's definitely part of my workflow as I rebalance all my channels on a daily basis. Incredibly knowledgeable. JC is at ZEBEDEE. And JC, what is your actual role at ZEBEDEE?
So I work with the community, and I'm also the chief evangelist there.
Amazing. So JC is the person who kind of kicked off everything that's happening in Plebnet by orange pilling D++ and a bunch of other people, and then we've all kind of cascaded from that. So JC's been deeply involved in Lightning for a long time and knows more about this stuff than most. Alex Bosworth, you hardly need an introduction. You are at Lightning Labs and the creator of the tool Balance of Satoshis, which is frankly a godsend. Is there anything else that you would add? How do you describe yourself when you're talking to people who are involved in Bitcoin and the Lightning Network?
Yeah, I've been involved with Lightning a long time. I'm the Lightning infrastructure lead at Lightning Labs, and working more on the services side of things, try to get the infrastructure of the routing network to be up and running and to be delivering payments across the world.
Got it. Yeah, I'm always impressed by your response time. There's a Telegram channel that Alex has set up, and no matter what time of day it is, it seems like if I send something or anybody else does, you respond in about 15 seconds. It's quite impressive. Vivek, we've also got you up here. You're at Blockstream doing awesome stuff over there, and also a Lightning enthusiast. We've got Michael Tidwell. Michael, how would you describe what you do and how it involves the Lightning Network?
So I'm Michael Tidwell. I work at ZEBEDEE as well as JC. If I was to describe this, if you heard what Alex said about being, kind of core infrastructure at Lightning Labs, I'm more or less the abstract professional services version of that junior division for a company using the stuff that they're making. So I help run all the infrastructure and core, cloud infrastructure at ZEBEDEE. So head of operations / Lightning engineer, I guess, is somewhat close to what I do.
Yeah, I love it. Also, Michael's been working on a really cool set of Terraform. You call them scripts? Is that the right term? Recipes?
Terraform modules.
Terraform modules that basically will allow you to deploy a Lightning node on AWS in a very robust way, which is a super exciting thing for me personally because I run a number of physical nodes, but I want to explore running Lightning nodes more in the cloud. So super excited about that. And then of course we've got Keagan. Keagan, how would you describe yourself? Can you give us just a brief taste of who you are and what you're about?
Yeah, so I'm one of the co-founders of Start9. We build the Embassy, which is a product to make self-hosting various pieces of software, like server software, super easy. So the notable things that, to this room are things like Bitcoin D and LND, C Lightning, etc. Although, the operating system is, extensible to basically accept any sort of server software as a module. So yeah, we just try to make it as easy as possible to bring up nodes online. And my role within all of it is really just to maintain the entire Bitcoin and Lightning stack on top of Embassy OS. And that involves also, various other services on top of it.
I love it. Yeah, I'm super excited about Embassy and Start9 and everything that y'all are doing. It's the kind of, we think about self-sovereignty in a monetary sense with Bitcoin, but as you've talked about in many places, self-sovereignty extends to the data that we produce and the systems and tools that we use over the internet. So I think it's really important work. That's
kind of a motto to think about is not your silicon, not your software.
Ooh, I like that. I like that a lot. That's awesome. Yeah. All right, let's dive in. We've got a bunch of other people up here as well. Yeah, I guess I wanted to kick us off by what has happened in the last, let's say, 1 to 2 weeks that is particularly exciting. Is there anything that anybody that's up here wants to throw in as a topic for this group?
Does it have to be lightning related?
I mean, yes. It can be vaguely lightning related, but
Alex Bosworth's favorite food. Go.
Alex.
I mentioned the whole the carnivore thing. I mean, Bitcoin people aren't just right about one thing, in my experience.
I was going to say, P, it's like I've been doing lightning stuff all day long, and then you come get me on here, and we have to talk about lightning again? Come on. Just kidding.
I mean, look, you knew what you were walking into when you signed up for this.
I was curious. Well, so I wanted to see if Justin Camarena would come up too. He's another routing wizard, just like Alex. He's at Bitrefill. And I was curious, like, if anyone took a deeper look into Rene's paper. Other stuff I've been excited about and more curious about is how maybe Sapio can be used for channel constructions, stuff like that. General thoughts.
Definitely want to cover Rene's paper. What is Sapio, though?
Sapio is Jeremy Rubin's project that's working on, it builds off of the proposed OpChop check template verify, which is BIP 119.
Yep.
But basically, it's a covenant system for Bitcoin. And for those of you who don't know what covenants are, it's basically like right now, Bitcoin script has the ability to talk about the format of like inputs or the witness itself, but there's no real way to specify.
Test.
I don't know if I lost you or
I lost him too.
All right, Keegan, we lost you for a minute. Sounds like you were giving an excellent explanation.
I was about to say I was on the edge of my seat, and then you just left me there.
They got him. Keegan, if you're still with us, try unmuting yourself or disconnecting and reconnecting, and I'll pull you back up. Does anybody else want to jump in and describe exactly what Sapio is and where we're going with that? Vivek, you want to jump in?
Sure. I'll take a stab at it. Yeah. So, Sapio can actually be used today itself, but I guess it becomes more useful with BIP 119, like Keegan was saying. It's covenants. Generally, these covenants are other, I guess, limits to spending paths and things of that nature. I've heard Jeremy Rubin give the analogy that miniscript is like keys, and Sapio is more like a path or like a flow. Like he described it to like a process of someone kind of getting onto a bus at a certain time and then getting off at a certain time, and then a lot more conditional based things that I guess wouldn't be in the actual script itself. I was particularly interested in like what it can be used for channels, because I've heard him talk about certain ways where essentially UTXOs can be put aside, and they can essentially be like how do I say it? It's not like settled on chain or whatever, but in the certain path where it's like it's mutually understood that it's going as expected. I don't know if I'm explaining that as layman terms as I can.
Keegan, would you add anything to that? And also, welcome, Matt. It's good to have you here.
Yeah, so
Cheers.
the way
Continue.
that it works is it's primarily the new primitive that it really brings into the fold is output restriction. And so what it basically says is that, like, yeah, you might be able to spend this particular output, but you can only spend it to, today in Bitcoin, if you try to spend an output, you can spend it to literally any other output that you could possibly want. And every covenant system is trying to find different ways to specify restrictions on where those coins can be sent after the fact. And what that ends up meaning is that you end up getting out of the deal the ability to construct finite state machines. And so you can create all sorts of sophisticated step-by-step contracts where, like if this person signs, then the next step is these other two people have to sign. Whereas if someone else signs, then something else can happen altogether. So how those can be used in Lightning in particular, I'm unaware of the exact constructions, but I believe, and if I'm wrong about this or if someone else knows more about this, then feel free to jump in. But I believe that it can replace the punishment scheme as a means of state updates in Lightning. I think that people have been talking about any pre-vout and a protocol called L2 to try to come up with a solution system that isn't predicated on punishing.
Can you guys hear him?
Yeah, it seems like we're losing you, but it's interesting the idea that it would replace the punishment transaction or the justice transaction, which, by the way, is the coolest named thing. I feel like it's the name of a heavy metal band, the justice transaction.
Well, so it's like the update mechanism in general. Like I think that's what Keegan was alluding to, similar to like the L2 design.
Got it.
Yeah.
And to be clear, they're not strictly substitutes within an L2 protocol. It's just that they both give you tools that you would need to be able to do away with the punishment scheme. So if you were to try to build something like L2 on top of check template verify, it might look completely different than if you tried to build it off of any or sighash any pre-vout.
Oh, interesting. Huh. Got it. Okay.
If you really want to know about this, though, you should get Jeremy into one of these sessions because he'll be able to talk at length about it.
I definitely will. Huh. Well, so I don't know, Vivek. I mean, did you have specific questions? Did you want to ask anyone on the panel specific questions about that, or just sort of generally?
Just general thoughts. I see like Jeremy doing the tours about PlebFi. He's gonna come here to Austin next. So that's just naturally what I've been most curious about I guess the Lightning Network itself also currently, and aside from Rene's paper, of course.
Cool. Well, does anyone want to comment on that, or should we go on to Rene's paper?
I think we should talk about Rene's paper.
Let's do it. Keegan, you want to give us a summary again?
I mean, so the paper is basically making the claim that there is an optimal routing strategy that can be solved that is not NP complete, which is a big result from a computational perspective and academic perspective. But one of the conditions in it was the fact that the base fee had to be dropped to zero. And so whenever you route, or whenever a payment is routed through the Lightning Network, there are two fee components. Number one is the base fee, which is just how much are you paying at all to this node in order for it to forward an HTLC. And then there's a ppm, or parts per million, which is essentially a variable rate that scales with the size of the payment that you're trying to route. Most people are making most of the money that they're making on the ppm. However, the base fees are typically non-zero for a lot of spam prevention and general incentive problems. But this paper, in order to work, requires that those base fees are broadly set to zero. Otherwise, the problem becomes NP complete.
Can you just define for the audience what an NP complete problem is?
It means it's the hardest set of problems within the non-deterministic polynomial class, which the takeaway from that is it's really hard, and you essentially have to try everything in order to know that you for sure got the best result.
So what you're saying is that basically the claim that Rene is making is quite it's quite a large one.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to say that you can, in polynomial time, decide what the optimal route through the Lightning Network is actually really cool. The disappointment I have with it is that it requires preconditions that I believe are unlikely to take, because it would require setting the base fees to 0, which means that you create incentive problems. I think, Alex, you could probably comment more about this since you talk about it a lot, but I think you were saying that in L&D, the PPM fees are rounded down. So with a sufficiently small payment, that no fees actually end up getting paid. And the only way to fight against that is to have non-zero base fees.
It's not L&D specific. That's just the protocol, because it's a percentage and it's working on a number that can only represent so much precision. And the way it's described is, 1 out of a million. So if you have less than a million, it has to do something with it. And the way that the protocol is written is it will go down. So yeah, there is some number, and this is not like a new discovery. People have noticed this a long time. And if you implement it, you'll see that you have to round down. There's ways you can work around it. You can cut off the smallest size of transactions. You can bump up your PPM fee to much higher. I think that's like illustrating also that it's your node. You could do whatever you want with it. That's a challenge when it comes to optimizing for a network of people who could just do anything that they want. It might work in a paper, but in reality, it might not actually help you.
So, question from a guy who here is not a coder, but I mean, are you saying like you can't make it round up? Like there's a reason why you can't make it round up?
I mean, you could offer more fees if you wanted to.
No, I mean, like, to you as the guy who makes the protocol, can you change the protocol to round up instead of down? Like, can you fork LND and everybody run one that rounds up instead?
Well, everybody could just do it in their own client. You could offer more funding, and you could reject things that don't. There's no consensus rule that you're breaking. It's just kind of like how people interact with each other. And currently, the way that people interact with each other is to round down.
Is it not worth what seems like a small change, like the improvements that you get in?
I don't think rounding down is the problem.
I don't know if there are any improvements. I mean, I think that's still to be demonstrated that there's actually any improvement.
Yeah, I don't think the issue is whether it rounds up or down. I think it's the idea that that essentially zero base fee is useful. And so just for the audience, the way it works is basically if you are operating a node in a Lightning network, you basically there's a number of different parameters that you can set for your own node. Well, a ton of them actually, but 2 of the most significant ones are your base fee, which is the transaction, which is the cost for routing anything through you, whether it is a 1 sat transaction or an 100 sat transaction or a 1,000,000 sat transaction. And then there's also your fee rate, which is the amount that is charged per 1,000,000 sats that is routed through you. And the Lightning Network can be thought of as this sort of competitive market where everyone is trying to, or not trying to, but they are incentivized to essentially kind of undercut each other in order to get the best, the most routes through them, earn the most, and so that's kind of what's going on here. So Rene has argued that setting base fees to 0, that is to say, the amount that you are paid as a routing node, because again, the Lightning Network is this sort of spider web of nodes, and if I have a channel with JC, and then JC has a channel with Jestopher, and then Jestopher has a channel with Keagan, and Keagan has a channel with Alex, I can basically bounce payments all the way through the network in order to make a Lightning payment to Alex. I don't have to be directly connected to him, and so that's one of the really cool things about the Lightning Network. And as I understand it, Rene is basically arguing that we should all set our base fees to 0, because that will allow this problem, which is a much more difficult problem to solve and takes a lot of computational power. It will allow us to simplify that 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 computation in order to make it super, in order to create much more efficient routing systems.
Well, I think you need to be careful about how you describe solve. So there's like two kinds of solve. There's one kind of solve, which is solve an equation on a paper. And there's another kind of solve, which is like deliver results to people.
That's a great point.
And I think if you think about base fee, you think about a fixed fee plus a percentage fee in the context of splitting up a payment into many different pieces. You can see why it's complicated to optimize, because the more you split up your payment into more little pieces, you're incurring more of these fixed fees. So that makes a pathfinding kind of fee optimization difficult, because if I split it into 100,000 pieces, now I have to think, oh, am I really saving any money in the base fees? Because those base fees are stacking up. So if you're just thinking about it from a calculus point of view, it would be very nice if those base fees didn't exist. And you know, I wouldn't argue that base fees should be substantial, but the reason that they were introduced was to introduce a cost into attaching an HTLC, like a conceptual cost. Because there is a cost, you can only process so many HTLCs at a single time. If an HTLC goes to the chain, you'll pay an additional chain fee for it. So conceptually, splitting up the payment into a billion, bajillion little shards can work very well in a simulation. But if you actually try it in real life, you're gonna maybe hit problems. One of those HTLCs is gonna get stuck or something like that. So that's kind of like the solution side of things. It's like, how can we actually optimize? How can we use splitting to deliver better experiences for people that interacts with the real network?
So Alex, are you a fan of the idea of multipath payments?
Well, I think that they are good. They're great in situations where you are just fundamentally constrained with the amount of capital that you're able to send out of your channels. So one use that we use it for with Lightning Loop is if you want to send the funds of let's say you want to send the funds of all your channels and you want to send them all out to the chain. So one way to do that is that you could close all of your channels and you could pay a bunch of close fees, and now your channels are dead. Or you could use the Lightning Loop service and you could send the off-chain, you could send the contents of all the channels, off-chain and off-chain HTLCs. You lock them to the loop server. The loop server sends you one on-chain HTLC because it's receiving all of those different HTLCs in multipath payment.
Oh, interesting.
And now what used to take you, maybe 10 on-chain transactions, now it's only resulting in one on-chain transaction. But that's a very situational use.
Yeah.
So I'm a fan of multipath payments, but I don't think it's necessarily solving a lot of problems, because while that is a great, that's a cool use case. One way that it can go wrong is maybe one you're trying to send a payment off chain, and one piece gets to the server, but you're trying to send the other piece, and it's just not getting there. So one piece is waiting. While it's waiting, it's tying up liquidity across the route. It's tying up HTLC slots, which are limited across the route.
Interesting.
So by default, the normal payment system, it's not going to wait around forever. It'll actually only wait for 2 minutes. So what you'll see is you'll try to pay. It's going to wait for 2 minutes. The 2-minute timer will be up. Then the payment will fail back. So now you have to try again. Maybe when you try again, you'll have the same thing happen. So it can be not as good to do multipath payment. You kind of have to use it situationally to actually get a good experience.
Oh, interesting. And again, just for everyone listening, what we're talking about here is in the Lightning Network. Again, as I said, it's like this sort of spider web. It's an acyclic graph, and you can basically, I don't have to have a direct connection to any specific person in order to send them payments over the Lightning Network for essentially, currently, very close to zero fees and instantaneously. And there is the problem is that you can only send fees that basically can kind of route through these large channels if you are trying to send a large payment. And so Rene has basically has developed a I don't know if it's an algorithm or a system, but basically to allow, he's advocating for what are called multipath payments, which is if I want to send a full Bitcoin to Alex, because our nodes are not directly connected, I can basically, I can either try to find a route directly to him where I'm sending him a full Bitcoin, or I can basically split that payment up to into many different pieces, and then they will all sort of like rejoin at his node, and he will then receive that payment. Is that a fair characterization, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm just to be clear, like I'm not like advocating for big base fees. I also think that base fees should be minimal, and also like I think that multipath payment can be a super useful tool, and it's kind of like something that you can put in your toolbox, and the algorithms to optimize it are not solved. That's like we can always do better. So I think that's kind of like the path to doing better is like creating papers, studying techniques. I think it's just I just don't want people to think like, oh, we solved routing. That's kind of like an ongoing process.
And one of the other things is that just because the description of the problem being NP complete, and that's what that means is that in order to solve it, as in find the best possible solution, you have to essentially try them all. What that does not necessarily communicate is that if you can actually get something really close to the best possible one using various randomized algorithms in significantly shorter time. And most of the time that's good enough for people because you don't necessarily need the best possible route throughout what is now a 25,000 node network with many more, like many times that in the number of channels. So the result is definitely cool from an academic perspective, but it's far from necessary in a live environment.
So can I just take a quick poll of the speaker? So I reached out to Rene and I was trying to get him to join the space today. But can I just do a quick poll of like, do we feel on stage that the Rene's claims are more academic versus practical, or do we feel like there are super important and meaningful conclusions that can be drawn from that? And should we be trying? Should we all basically set our base fees to zero, which is the argument that Rene is making in order to allow us to optimize the Lightning Network? What do you think, Jestopher? Do you have an opinion? No is totally acceptable answer, by the way.
Let's see. I definitely don't want to stop anyone from exploring their theories on the Lightning Network or making important developments on it. So I certainly wouldn't want to discourage anyone from coming up with it. Of course, at the same time, my node has real costs of operation, and I don't want to change my policies based on, I don't know, this attempt at solving a very difficult routing problem. So I won't be dropping my base fees to zero at this point.
So I have an opinion about this. If now first I want to know that it was worth it, because if there's a negligible difference, then there's no point even talking about it. But if it were shown that it actually meaningfully improved the routing, very meaningfully, such that it was worth pursuing, I think there are ways it could be done, which wouldn't hurt somebody like Jestopher who values minimum transactions, while also not like killing the incentives and incentivizing like free spam attacks. You could round up for one, and you could also have like a minimum amount that you'll route. So if you so that way there's some non-zero cost. Plus, if Jestopher doesn't even want to have any kind of like 10 sat transactions going through him, then he can then he doesn't have to. So it can be solved like on a protocol level through LND or through C Lightning or wherever, where you could get rid of the base fee without meaning that there were free transactions available. So if it were worth it, I would support putting it into the base protocol.
Are these things mutually exclusive? Like I understand, JC, what you're saying, like in terms of you know, hey, if we're going to have 0 base fees, and it's like then we need a certain amount to route because of the percentage. But I'm wondering if does that skew anything in Renee's paper, or is that are those two things? I guess you could say those two things can exist and still you have the efficiencies of what Renee's proposing.
It would be like just saying that I can't route through this node. My payment's too small, so it's not even in the running. Just like channels that are too small for the payment that you're trying to push through are also not in contention. So I think it's just about, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think it's just about optimizing your choices.
Yeah, for the record, I don't think that there is an NP completeness concern with setting min HTLC because think about it this way: the routing problem is a constraint optimization problem, and so the first thing you have to do is you have to any payment that is too small, even on the iteration, right? Because the way that Rene's scheme works is that you might try something, and then anything that is any overflow on a particular channel gets kind of spilled over into new channels, and you can just at every point in that iteration prune the channel graph for all of the and remove all of the channel edges that have min HTLCs that are higher than whatever your remaining payment is. And so that part is relatively straightforward. The thing that gets tough is when you are trying to do the optimization, which is when once you've eliminated all of the things that just flat out won't work, how do you decide which one's the best one? And that's the part that's really the NP complete part.
Yeah, and so taking base fee out of that exponentially improves or decreases the complexity of the question. But I don't know, again, if it's worth, for example, thinking that you need to change the way LND works to do it.
Right, and so the paper, the cool thing about it, and the thing that it's really trying to push is this notion of optimality, right? It was able to essentially prove that under these conditions, it can very quickly find the best possible route. I know a lot less about the trampoline stuff, but amps and multipath payments are essentially the same thing. I think they're actually just different names for the same thing. I think one might refer to the fact that it's done by a Keysend and the other one's not.
Well, I think AMP is because it's all or nothing, the atomic aspect.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's the difference, because with an AMP, you can't complete the payment without all the pieces. But with an MPP, theoretically, if you were to give the secret away to any of the pieces, people could steal them before you got all the rest of your money.
Can we just define the difference between a multipath payment and an AMP?
AMP requires all the pieces before you can take the money, and a multipath payment does not. So you could take some of the money instead of all the money. But if you did do that, then everybody would know the secret. And so if the other pieces were still out there somewhere, and the people who got them could take them.
Yeah, so the life cycle of a Lightning payment is that generate a payment hash, and then the sender essentially offers an HTLC forward along with an onion packet that propagates itself through the Lightning network. And each one of the HTLCs that gets offered forwards has the same payment hash condition. And so you end up with, in a multipath payment scenario, you end up with a bunch of different routes all to the same destination. And then the receiver then takes the pre-image for that hash and uses it to redeem the HTLCs, and that happens in a backwards manner. But if for whatever reason, if you don't wait for all of the routes to get constructed along the way, all the way to the destination, then what happens is that if one of the routes is all the way to the destination and the other one's only halfway there, and you reveal the secret pre-image, then presumably the one that's only halfway there doesn't actually have to get all the way to the destination, and they can come by the payment pre-image through some other means and steal the payment halfway through. I think that's the actual mechanics underneath that.
And I'm curious if anybody here knows, just came to my mind, but how does Keysend prevent the issue that a zero invoice has, where the intermediate nodes can essentially forward you, less than the whole payment? Let's say on a tip. Let's say you're tipping me. I'm a musician. I have a little QR code, and it's a zero invoice, which means you can send any amount. somebody tips me 5,000 sats. Now, I don't know how much he's tipping me, so the node on the way to me takes half of them, gives me 2,500 sats, and I claim that payment and say, thanks for the 2,500 sats, and I get paid 2,500, and the guy in front of me also gets 2,500, but I don't know that because I didn't know. But now with Keysend, I don't ever hear anybody talking about this problem, so I assume it was solved, but I don't know how. Does anybody know?
I do not.
It's a shame we don't have Alex anymore.
He's trying to rejoin right now.
Is he really? Okay. Look, this is the price we pay for using bleeding edge technology. The Lightning Network, Twitter Spaces,
Routing packets is harder than routing sats, believe it or not.
This is some bullshit.
We were asking for some topics earlier, Pete. One topic that I would love to get some coverage on was, how did Plebnet get started?
Ooh, yeah, that is a phenomenal question. So, essentially, Plebnet hatched out of a golden egg. Okay, Theseus gave birth to this egg. No, what actually happened is JC, who I believe is on the stage and speaking rather, he has been super awesome about trying to orange pill as many people as possible, and then lightning pill them as well. And JC got D++ excited about lightning, and specifically LNTXbot. And then there was a community that was created that grew into a different community that grew into a larger community. I got involved, and basically it's kind of gone from there. So there was a Clubhouse Lightning group, and then there was a Coin Beast group that D started, and then we got kicked out of there, and that turned into the Plebnet Telegram group, which currently exists. And essentially it's been all of us like learning about lightning together, right? Because there's this interesting there's this thing that happens where basically like everybody or people who are successful at running lightning routing nodes, there is a bit of an incentive to kind of protect your own alpha, right? To basically protect the edge that you have discovered, and that can kind of be counter to the growth of the larger network. And the thing that to me is so compelling about Bitcoin and the Lightning Network specifically is that those incentives over the medium term and the long term tend to actually align. And so all of us basically, there's like, I don't know, maybe 20 of us who were like, we want to learn how Lightning works and we want to run effective Lightning nodes. And we all kind of got together and started this Plebnet group. And then we have been collaborating together, trying new things, and kind of growing from there. And creators who have been building these really effective tools, whether it's Alex Bosworth or Small World, who has built LN Node Insight, or Gridflare, who has built this really cool command line utility that basically allows you to optimize your centrality and more effectively figure out which channels might be valuable or which ones you should close. Or Severin, who has built lnrouter.app. These are all these rapidly developing systems and tools that are allowing us to kind of make the Lightning Network more robust. And it's been really cool because as we've built out the Plebnet and the groups that are associated with it, and there are a number of them, we've been able to collaborate in ways that I personally haven't seen happen in the Lightning Network at large. So people basically just sharing information and discoveries, understanding that the knowledge that benefits other individuals is also knowledge that benefits the larger Lightning Network. And so it's been very cool to see. And so
it's been a blast to watch, just because it seems like Plebnet has been finding all of the tools that have been quietly being built, and they're putting them to use. I mean, even my blog has been getting some use, as well as I attribute lots of Amboss's success, to Plebnet. I mean, just as far as people using it, and just it's cool to watch, LN Router app, as well as the LN Node Insight get a whole bunch of use. Yeah. And then the wiki just
Yeah,
emerged.
totally. I was sad that Small World, who created LN Node Insight, which everybody who is running a Lightning node should definitely check out. He was originally going to join us, then wasn't able to join us today. But we are still so early, right? Like I feel like the Lightning Network is kind of where Bitcoin was like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, right? And it's really interesting to have conversations with people who were kind of OG, who are, like OG Bitcoiners. Paul, who is a huge advocate of, BIP 300 and drive chains. That it's really interesting to interact with people who have not actually used the Lightning Network within the last 12 months and have not been able to see the incredible growth that's happening there.
All right, Bitcoiners, I want to tell you about our newest sponsor. This show is brought to you by Ledn.io. I have been super, super impressed with the guys over at Ledn. I've actually known the co-founders, Adam and Mauricio, for a very long time. I've had the pleasure to watch them build Ledn up from a tiny, tiny startup to now a super impressive institutional grade Bitcoin and crypto lender. Y'all, I'm so impressed with these guys. They are offering some of the best rates out there. I don't think anyone even comes close to touching them. You can get 6.1% APY on your first 2 Bitcoin that you deposit into Ledn interest accounts, and you can get 8.5% on USDC deposits. I mean, I know all the competitors. They're not even close. If you're going to put your crypto and your Bitcoin into an interest account, Ledn is by far the best. And on top of that, like I said, these guys are hardcore Bitcoiners, and they know the products and the services that Bitcoiners want and appreciate. They come up with B2X. It allows you to put your Bitcoin in, they leverage it up, and you can, with one click of the mouse, get twice the exposure to Bitcoin. So if you're super bullish, Ledn has you covered with a super, super easy way to get leverage with B2X. And then on top of that, they know that Bitcoiners care about your reserves. They know that Bitcoiners don't like under reserved and not full reserved financial institutions. So they are pushing the frontier in transparency in the digital asset lending space. And they are the first digital asset lender to do a full proof of reserves and proof of attestation through a Mariano LLC, a public accounting firm. So the Ledn guys, they know what Bitcoiners like. They are legit. I encourage you guys to check them out. Do your own research and go to Ledn.io. That is LEDN.io and learn more. Bitcoiners, I want to tell you about the Deep Dive. The Deep Dive is Bitcoin Magazine's premium market intelligence newsletter. This is a no fluff, hard-hitting, incredible newsletter going deep into the market, helping you understand what's happening with derivatives, what's happening on-chain, what's happening in macro, what's happening with the narrative, and what's happening with the tech. My man, Dylan LeClaire, is an absolute savant. He is making his name known in the Bitcoin community, getting shout outs left and right, getting on podcasts left and right, and him and his team are bringing you everything that you need to know about Bitcoin. You don't even have to be on Bitcoin Twitter. You can ignore every other newsletter. This is the newsletter to rule them all. Go over to members.bitcoinmagazine.com, sign up today. And if you use promo code MACRO, you get a full month for free. You have nothing to lose. What are you waiting for? Sign up, see the incredible work that Dylan and his team are putting out. And if you don't like it, just unsubscribe. You don't pay a dime. But if you do, it's going to be well worth the sats in investment in understanding Bitcoin and gaining the confidence to continue to invest in Bitcoin and making the right moves around Bitcoin. And it's going to be well worth every single Satoshi. Again, can't recommend it enough. That is members.bitcoinmagazine.com, promo code MACRO. Do it today.
Everyone on stage has been actively participating, but I'm actually really curious, like, Matt, what has your experience been over the last 12, 24 months around the Lightning Network? What have you seen in terms of people getting on board? Have you noticed that more and more listeners are using Breeze to stream sats to you guys as you're running your podcasts?
I mean, we've come a long fucking way. I don't know. I mean, my learning experience personally with Lightning was one that was very bumpy and cost me a lot of sats. And I've personally seen the tools improve tremendously since then in a way that could have guided me to not lose so much money. Mostly that was in on-chain fees, to be clear. So I think the streaming sats is an obvious use case. Maybe I'm a little bit biased because I have 2 podcasts, but like literally see the sats coming in as people listen to it. Like as soon as you upload it, you just start seeing sats come in. It's the coolest fucking thing. It's just really, really tangible. And just secondary, I just feel like the UX of the biggest thing to me recently has been Moon Wallet, MUUN. And it's such an easy onboarding experience, and it completely caught me off guard. I did not, maybe I was being like a little bit grumpy old timer, but I didn't expect that kind of UX to be so easy for someone who just wants to make a couple payments. And I'm like starting to think, I really love seeing the Plebnet initiative. I love the idea of the rings of fire in general in terms of creating liquidity. I mean, in the beginning, when I tried to pump liquidity into the system with sovereign Lightning Tor nodes, which is what I think we need. I think we need this, a solid liquidity base of basically independent sovereign Bitcoiners running Lightning nodes through Tor. Otherwise, you'll just have big companies running them, and then the system gets captured relatively easily. So when I first tried to jumpstart it, I basically just created a huge bottleneck in my own node. Like we just had listeners would just open up channels with our node, and then we'd open a channel back. And that was just a horrible idea. That's why we lost so much money.
Yep.
So now we have this rings of fire idea, and it really builds like this solid liquidity base, which is just fantastic to see. And the combination of that and the mobile wallets, I start to question, I think, it's good to have, we need to have the sovereign node base that is actually running these nodes. But at the end of the day, I think the overwhelming majority of people are probably just going to, have a mobile app, and they're just going to load it up with some sats, and they're just going to have no idea what's going on in the background. And that's probably good enough.
One question I had for you, Matt, was, since you come like as kind of, in my mind, an OG Bitcoiner that's very privacy focused, where, you're kind of like free to disappear because you're being very thoughtful about the information that you're putting out there. And then coming into the Lightning Network, which seems to be almost reputational, where, if someone knows about your node and they know who you are, then they might want to open a channel to you if they, like the stuff you're doing. I mean, you put together 2 fantastic podcasts, so I'm sure you just get a lot of people that want to open channels to you. So I'm kind of curious what you think about, Lightning Network as a social network and as being somewhat reputationally driven.
Right now, like the biggest issue on the privacy side of Lightning is receiving and routing. If you're sending, it makes a lot more sense. And basically in a privacy focused like sending environment, you're just really constantly spinning up nodes and then starting fresh again. Maybe open like 1 or 2 channels, maybe even use something like one of the light wallets, and you combine it with a VPN or Tor, and then you just use it for like a couple payments, and then you get rid of it. So it's not really that intuitive yet, but obviously just having things off chain should be a natural improvement. And they're basically batch transactions. The whole reputational thing is so sticky, man. It does concern me a bit because I feel like it's very hard to run a Lightning routing node privately. You obviously should, and a lot of us do, run it natively through Tor, and we don't, ever expose the IP address. But every time you create an invoice, you're showing your pub key, so if you link it to yourself in any kind of an external way, it's, you know, all of your publicly broadcast channels are visible. So there's a lot of privacy gotchas, especially if you're trying to play the reputation game on routing and have a long lasting node. I mean, I can't speak to it as well as a lot of other people on stage up here, but I definitely have the concerns. I can speak to the concerns. I can't speak to the intricacies of it. It's just there's so many gotchas everywhere.
Thank you. And actually, Vivek might be able to comment on this, but the Blockstream just came out with the nodes that
Greenlight. Yeah, it's fucking awesome.
Yeah. Do you think that might play a role in the privacy reputation piece of running a node on the Lightning Network?
So I gotta hop real fast in 2 minutes for a meeting, but essentially, Greenlight was to create sort of a funnel for new users to get onboarded to Lightning really quickly. You know, not have to worry about the whole balancing capacity, routing aspects like that, and learn about it, and then eventually, you know, go out and have their own Lightning node and try to make those trade-offs as thoughtful as possible with keeping your keys. However, like privacy, I don't necessarily think this is I want to say like a proposed aspect of one of these trade-offs. But yeah, I guess you are having all the routing, I guess, would be done through whatever node your node that's being spun up is connected to. So I guess maybe you're not private because all those channels are connected to Blockstream's node or something. But you know, I haven't like taken a deeper look at how these nodes are being spun up. Would definitely love to get Christian Decker to talk about this more in the future. But we just started this recently with Striga, previously known as LastBit, and Sphinx. So yeah, I'm a bit out of the loop on the inner workings. Sorry, Jestopher.
Well, yeah, sorry, didn't mean to put you on the spot there. But I'm super curious because I think it'll be a big thing in the future.
I mean, yeah, it's cool. I guess the way even I remember Lalu talked about neutrino. There's certain block filter aspects that make it a bit more private for like the lightweight clients. But I think the fundamental aspects of it just being like a hot wallet that needs to be interactive, that's very hard to solve. Yeah, I don't know if there's any way around that.
I mean, I think it could be pretty helpful on like the sending side once again. Because like on the sending side, if you're a spender, the idea is if you have ways to make easy, quick, disposable Lightning wallets, you can jump into, you know, the permissionless network that is Lightning and make a couple payments that are not on chain with a single UTXO, and then just close it out and maybe do something else. You know, use it, spin up a new node in the future. But as far as like long-term routing or long-term receiving as a merchant, I mean, I don't see any kind of real privacy gains there.
Yeah, but personally, I think about the allocation costs. You know, I've essentially entrenched myself in building all this channel infrastructure. So, and there's a real cost to changing all of that infrastructure, closing my channels, opening new channels to different places. Yeah, as you found out in opening up reciprocal channels, there's a real cost to those allocations. So you have to be smart about using the mempool for that. Let's see, P, I didn't mean to hijack the conversation here, but we got the privacy folks and Blockstream with Greenlight. So I just super curious about that.
No, this is totally awesome. It's the beauty of having an open-ended conversation without a specific agenda. So please continue. This is a super important conversation.
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to comment on, and obviously I have a very sort of particular point of view here, but I don't think that you can ever expect there to be privacy gains if that privacy is at the custodianship of another actor, right? Like I don't have any problems with Blockstream whatsoever. but I'd be hard pressed to believe that you'd be getting privacy gains from having nodes hosted, whether that's from Voltage, whether that's from Blockstream, or I think there's another company doing it as well, or I think Nodl does some of it as well in terms of hosted nodes. And there are plenty of great reasons to use hosted nodes, but I don't know that privacy is one of them, because at the very bare minimum, your provider is going to have a lot of the info about the way that you use their product, and depending on the product's design, how you end up using the underlying technologies, such as Lightning itself.
Yeah, I agree with that, definitely. Anytime you're trusting anybody to keep your information a secret, that's not necessarily good privacy.
I think a really important thing here that often gets missed is people can have the best intentions. People can really be thinking of it from like, no, we're going to maintain user privacy. We're going to maintain privacy on the network. And if the systems that are being used allow people to take advantage of that and destroy privacy, we have to basically be aware that is likely to eventually happen, right? Whether we're talking about these, aggregated KYC systems or custodial Lightning wallets, it's not about the intentions of the people. People love to say like, oh no, but they're a good actor, like they're only going to do what's best for us. It's not about that. It's about what can be taken advantage of, what somebody can be pressed to do if they're threatened with a subpoena or jail time, or if a hacker gets involved.
Yeah, that's the key right there. It's the subpoena thing. Like a lot of the things that we talk about at Start9 is like, are we subpoena proof? Or like, sorry, are our customer, obviously we're not. Are our customers immune to subpoenas that we might be served with? Because while our customers can, run all of their nodes off of Tor, they can set this thing up without permission. We sell, products to them, but we otherwise don't know who they are. The question is like Start9 itself, like we have a business address in somewhere, right? And our business is run at the kind of at the permission of whatever government structure that you have. And so if you are operating in such a way that you are retaining some of that information, even if you are perfect 100%, right? Even if you genuinely are a good actor, even if you resist any sort of monetary incentives that you might have to corrupt that point of view, the question is that at the end of the day, are you going to go to jail over it? And it's just better not to have the data at that point.
Yeah, and it's more than just if you get subpoenaed or go to jail. Are you willing as a company or as an individual to go to jail over it? It's anytime you have these centralized systems, they become really attractive targets for people to exploit, take advantage of, and hack, and basically sell that information on the dark web. And so it's more than just what your legal exposure is. It's, are you collecting information that basically puts your customers or your users at a disadvantage if you were to be compromised?
I heard this fantastic phrase at this privacy conference, and it was a whole presentation on data is the new oil, because all the corporations want.
We lost you for a second. You said data is the new
oil. All the big corporations want all the oil, all the data that they can. But as we saw in the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, I mean that data leaks and it can really blow up in your face. So I appreciate that what Keagan was saying about it being subpoena proof. That'll be a big takeaway for me.
There are custodial models where the custodial institution doesn't know information about its customers or about their payments. So David Chown was famous for this, and he started DigiCash at this Challenger banks in the 90s. He didn't know who his customers were; they were anonymous accounts. He didn't know who was making payments in his bank, but he was able to facilitate incoming payments to members of his bank and external payments from members of his bank to others outside of his bank, as well as internal transfers, all in a privacy-focused manner. And one benefit of those models that you don't achieve when everyone self-hosts is that there's a greater anonymity set you get when you're part of a large group of people who are all from an external observer's perspective. they're all the same entity. They're all the same institution sending out those payments. Because then if we do, if you are trying to do chain analysis or network analysis for Lightning to figure out where the payments are, who the payments are coming from, you have a pretty big anonymity set there. You can say, well, I know it's a member of this bank, but that bank has 50 members, and I don't know, not even the bank knows who made that payment within their members.
From a privacy perspective, that's true. But the trade-off that you make there is that the larger the custodian is, the more probable that they can be put under pressure for various forms of censorship. Now, I think your point being is that even if the institution itself doesn't know who their customers are, it might be very difficult to selectively censor things. But it's not impossible at all for some like a regulatory structure to come in and say, well, okay, you have to undo this design, or you have to stop servicing your customers. And in that sense, then, even if you're not selectively censoring, if you're essentially denying service to all of your customers because you choose not to comply with one of these orders, then you're like any of those customers could experience a form of censorship by their institution getting shut down in ways that if they were self-hosting, they are not exposed to that particular risk.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And one of the difficulties of starting any centralized service is once you have customers, it's very hard to keep yourself anonymous. But if you can manage to do that, if you can have a wide customer base and no one knows who you are, you can get away with doing that stuff for a very long time. See the Silk Road as an example. So I think that I would like to see more examples of anonymous banking, of anonymous Bitcoin banking, where the bank doesn't know who its customers are, the feds don't know who runs the bank, and that would be great. At least I think it would be great. I'd love to see more development in that direction.
What's the use case for a third-party Bitcoin bank when you can be your own bank on Bitcoin?
Yeah, well, one is greater anonymity sets. That you can achieve greater anonymity sets for cheaper if you are part of if all of the members of the bank are sharing the same UTX sets.
It's like a custodial coin join kind of, with like time delays on it.
Yeah, it's very, very similar to that, or mixers are like this, except they're usually, an ideal mixer is what I'm kind of describing, where everybody in the mix has the same UTXOs, they can withdraw them at any time, and ideally, nobody knows who owns or operates the mixer.
To me, that just sounds like a shittier mix. Like, we could keep our fun. You can keep mixing, you can keep mixing and mixing and mixing if you want, and get out whenever you want, and without trusting anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can. It's my understanding that custodial mixers are cheaper as well than pin joins.
The microphone is not the most clear microphone that I've heard today, by the way.
Yeah, it sounds like you're kind of fighting the good fight from inside of like an Atlas missile silo or underwater or something.
Me?
Yeah.
I'll change my mic.
Do it.
While you're changing your mic, I'm going to ask Alex the question that I asked earlier that you obviously had an answer to, but Mr. Bosworth, question. I know that with zero invoices, in other words, full invoices that you can send any amount of money to arbitrarily, there was the issue of, since you didn't know how much money you were receiving, you didn't know if the node or any of the peers along the route took some of that money, and then you ignorantly, accepted it and gave the pre-image and let everybody have the funds. With Keysend, how is this not a problem anymore? How is that problem solved with Keysend?
Well, the problem was also addressed with the addition of the payment nonces. So when you create an invoice now, it generates not just the payment pre-image, but it also generates another random number. And that random number is added into the payment request, that big long string that you give to people. And then when you make a payment, you take that random number and you include it in the onion blob. You encrypt it to the destination. And the destination, when they unpeel the onion, they check the veracity of that number and they say, does this match what I gave you in the payment request? And if it doesn't match, then they're going to reject the payment. So there is a way to kind of deal with this using this new feature. So that's kind of one way that kind of HTLC sniping can be eliminated. Is that if you're the last hop in the route, then you try to give that the same hash and try to get that pre-image for cheaper than you should. You're not going to be able to know what that encrypted value is. So the receiver is going to know you're fibbing. In Keysend, just the premise doesn't work for similar reasons. So when you send some money, the actual pre-image is not even known to the recipient. So remember, the onion is encrypted. So when you send that, if you try to stop the forward and extend an HTLC with the same hash, I'm sorry, it's kind of technical. If you try to extend the HTLC with the same hash, the receiver doesn't even know the pre-image because the pre-image is encrypted in that package. So it would be impossible for them to even take the payment.
Awesome, thanks. And I didn't know about the nonce. That's seems like an obvious thing that wasn't there before in hindsight. I don't know. That seems like really helpful.
Yeah, that's now that's been enforced in L&D for a while now. So it kind of just like a silent upgrade that's already live for a long time on the Lightning Network.
And a long time means like what, 6 months or a year?
Yeah, I mean it depends on how fast you've been updating, but yeah, like 6 months at least.
Awesome, thank you.
Alex, what are the things that you're personally most excited about? I feel like I have a hard time sort of like reading the things that you are that for you feel like the most sort of urgent or important, or the things that you're interested in having more people know about.
Well, something that I think is interesting is the ability for people to offer services other than routing on their nodes. And we already have kind of like, if you run a Bitcoin node, then you run an archival node, then you're offering services like you can download the rest of the blockchain. Mm-hmm. If you run a Lightning node, even the basic Lightning node with no capital on it, you're still helping the network by synchronizing the data about which nodes are there, which channels are there. And then if you add capital, now you can add a new service. You can say, I'm helping you move payments through the network. So that's like always been what's excited me a lot about Bitcoin, is that we have the ability to create these kind of decentralized services that everybody can take part in. Everybody can just set up a node and start kind of engaging in commerce with everybody else. You're like working together, and then you can use that money to kind of figure out where resources need to be. So like with a Lightning Network, we have the ability to use the routing fees to say there should be more capital here and less capital there. And I think we can apply that kind of same logic to all kinds of different APIs.
Interesting. You and I were talking at one point about your desire to build out interesting or kind of additional functions on top of Keysend. I mean, one of the things.
So we were even like you were saying before about the privacy aspect. So one of the services that I built that runs on my node is called Relay. And so if you give me a payment request, so like if you're receiving funds on your node, you can give me that payment request. And then I'll generate a mirror payment request that's keyed off of the same hash. And then I don't know the pre-image, so I can't take the money. You can give out my generated payment request to anybody. So then it looks like they're paying me, but I know that in order for me to get the pre-image, I have to pay you. So now you've kind of gotten rid of that problem of, oh, I had to tell this service about my UTXOs, because instead you say, oh, I have to tell Alex about my UTXOs. You can kind of chain those if you want in a link. And that can be something that, that's not like a solution at the protocol level, but that's like a solution at the application level, where it's like, I can notice a problem that people have and I can solve it. And that also works completely over Keysend. So all the communication, I don't have to run a Tor server. I don't have to set up like an API server. When somebody wants to use this service, they just key send me the details about the payment request, and I key send them back, or I pay them back using TLV with the details about, okay, here's how it's going to work.
I think that's so interesting. I mean, one of the things that I really love about the stuff that you built out is not only have you built out the the libraries and the npm modules such that they are extremely modular, right? Like all the functionality that is used by Balance of Satoshis, which is of course the tool that you've built out that allows one to from the command line. It's an abstraction layer on top of a lot of the LNCLI functionality, and adds more even there. But I have been continually impressed by your kind of response to some of the challenges that that have come up within the Lightning Network or on the Lightning Network. I think there's a lot of kind of I wouldn't even call it FUD, but it's just it's still early, and I really appreciate that you're kind of diving in and creating these kind of novel solutions to these problems, which ideally will be implemented at a protocol level in the future, but in the meantime, solve these needs very effectively. I mean, the most clear example of that for me is, the dual funded channel function process that you have built out that it is trustless. It does not require, like in Plebnet, initially we were kind of at this point where we were like, all right, so we're doing these ghetto submarine swaps. So, you're going to open a channel, and then somebody's going to send you a Lightning invoice, and then you're going to send them back the funds on chain. And it was really interesting for me to learn that like the vast majority of people had not even used the Balance of Satoshi's command line tool to do the Keysend based dual funded channel opens that you built out. And I think that's I don't know, I think it's really cool that you're solving these problems in kind of a novel way using the tools that are available to us right now.
Well, I like that complicated problems will be solved at the app level rather than the protocol level, because we're dealing with things like free markets. We're dealing with things where people have like obscure requirements that are just personal to them. So I'm actually working on like an upgrade to that whole flow that works very differently. But the ability to innovate with applications, I think is not something that we can ever say should stop and should just be, everything should be defined in a protocol somewhere. Mm-hmm. I think, we need to be super adaptable at that application level of like, okay, today people really want this, just like the groups, like people want to create these channel groups. Nobody foresaw that. And people started creating applications for those groups.
Wait, sorry, can you define channel groups? You mean like sort of like Ring of Fire stuff?
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, people had it in their mind that the way I want to join Lightning Network, the way I want to interact with the Lightning Network is I want to join in these groups. That wasn't in the Lightning paper. That wasn't in any protocol. It's just kind of like a desire people have of how they want to join. So, and that might go away. So, there's no specific reasoning behind why you have to join in a group. It's just something that's what people feel comfortable with. That's what works for people. It's what works, with the way that they want to deploy their capital. And so, I want to see apps that kind of address those needs, like as they happen. And then if people don't want to do that anymore, that's fine. Those apps, are not used anymore, or they evolve to be what people want.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I think is so interesting is like, to me, like we're humans are incredibly social. We've evolved to be these social animals, right? We build communities. We have these we rely on the strengths of our social connections in order to succeed, and we have for forever. And so to me, like, it seems like things like the Ring of Fire community, Plebnet, the stuff that's happening in El Salvador, I think that's going to be the way that not only Bitcoin kind of drives forward, but also the Lightning Network. I think, and it's been really exciting to see the tools that are being developed right now. The stuff that the lnrouter.app and LN Node Insight, those kinds of tools. I think we're just going to continue going in that direction, which is to say, those kinds of tools, but kind of permutations that allow us to build those to use them in a community sense. So having a group of people that are, or a community that are using Lightning to transact and to, settle, obligations, and then from there, those communities will then expand and want to connect to larger communities and other communities that are in the network. I think that's the future of Lightning, and I've seen this happening both like with Plebnet, of course, right? Like I have had a Lightning node for a long time, but I only had like a couple channels and wasn't particularly interested until JC and D++ and all these other people, Rich Winder and KP, they kind of like, we were able to kind of, and Marshall, we kind of got together and created this like this group of this community of people that were trusted, but that we were all kind of learning together. I think that's going to happen over and over and over again, and it's already happening. Like there's a group on Clubhouse that Lamar has built out really amazingly. It's called the Black Bitcoin Billionaires Club, and they're already spinning up their own Lightning community, and then they're kind of connecting to Plebnet and they're connecting to the larger network. I think that's a really interesting. And I know you and I have talked about this in the Balance of Satoshi's chat, but I think that tools that support kind of figuring out how one's community exists within the larger Lightning network, and then also tools that support sort of creating these group kind of channel opens are going to be really, really powerful as we move forward.
Hey P, how's it going? I wanted to make a comment about this assertion that Alex made about how the difference, I think, between like protocol development and app development. I just wanted to kind of point out that like when you make that distinction, I think that's like a false equivalent or a false distinction, really, because even at the application layer, the kind of work that Boz has done with his Balance of Satoshi, the dual funded like protocol that he's written there, that's really still a protocol. It's like when you get down to it, a protocol is like writing out kind of canned conversations that two peers are going to have. And whether or not that's like in layers of different, like whether you're layering how you're talking to each other or not, excuse me, at the end of the day, you're still like coming up with a way that two parties are going to programmatically achieve a task or a goal. So whether you're doing that through like LNURL, I think is like a good example of a protocol that, you had to get adopted and have a bunch of different, people able to understand that protocol that you've written in order for that application or whatever you want to call it to be successful. Anyways, I don't think it's super useful to try and make this like distinction that there's protocols and then there's applications, because at the end of the day, in order for applications to all understand each other, like there will be a common protocol that they're all speaking. So whether and at what level, like what layer we're allowing ourselves to innovate there, I think that's definitely a good question. I know like the work we're doing on Sea Lightning, we tend to be, we see the spec process and the protocol that is encoded in the spec to be not quite finished yet and like open to modifications such that we can bring new features that we've seen people in the community kind of want and desire, and able to bring that back into the common definition of the protocol that is Lightning, that Lightning nodes can talk and understand each other at. But yeah, anyways, I just wanted to like point that out. Sorry.
I think it's just a question of like how heavy or light each protocol is and whether or not they can be taken piecemeal or not, right? I think the aversion to trying to put it in like the bolts is this perception. I actually don't think, the more I read the bolts, the more I realize that this is not true. But there's this perception that they're like one monolithic spec, and that in order to have a Lightning implementation at all, you have to sort of comply with all of it. And I think to the degree that we can make that more clear, the way the BIP repository kind of works, and I think that something was recently proposed called the blips, which I think that they offer a little bit more of a nuanced perspective, the way that you were just talking about, Nifty, which is that these protocols can be taken piecemeal. They don't have to be taken kind of wholesale.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think, I mean, the point I'm really trying to make is that when you're developing something such that you want applications to be able to talk to each other, that is protocol work. And at some point, you're going to have adoption of your protocols. So for the work that Alex has been doing, that literally means that if people want to use the stuff that he's developed, they have to install and run the Boz software that he's written, right? So like that's because like why is that? That's because he's taught it to speak a protocol, and if you want everyone to be able to like if you at that level, then it's like interoperability, right? If you want to be able to interoperate with that software, then you either need to be running the same thing. So you need to get everyone to adopt the same software that you've written, which means it needs to work across like everyone that might want to use it. Or at some level, that means you need to write it down in a repeatable way such that other people can integrate in with your software, right? So I think, yeah, what you're saying about the bolts is there's like a lot of different processes and parts of there's like a lot of different conversations, I should say, that Lightning nodes have. And the nice thing about the spec is that, yeah, they've all been written down and documented in a way that's repeatable. And that's really what the spec process is about, right? Is providing this repeatable platform that makes a common playing field such that the Lightning Network benefits from the network effects. I mean, it is called a network, right? So you can get network effects, which means that people running different software written by different teams is still able to interact and like have kind of a common foundation. Anyways.
I guess where do you see it sounds like there's like a bit of like conflict between Alex's approach and maybe your own. And I don't fully understand it. Like, what is it sounds like if you have the primitives in place that can be built upon,
Well, I mean, so like, if we want to go,
Go ahead.
like, I think dual funding is probably the easiest thing to compare contrast. And to be
Yeah.
honest, I haven't looked super in depth into the process that Alex has developed for the Boz stuff, but I know the process that's been proposed and implemented in Sea Lightning for the spec adoption pretty well.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that stands out to me, at least and it sounds like, again, like Alex is working on updating it, but currently it looks like you have to make 3 transactions in order to open a channel. So there's like a real cost to that, both in the amount of fees that someone who's participating in that open wants to contribute, like, on-chain fees go up, so it's a more expensive way of doing it. And additionally, that's more transactions on chain, right? And the whole point of Lightning, in theory, is to reduce the total on-chain footprint of the number of transactions, reduce the on-chain footprint of interacting with Bitcoin. So by going to the level of the spec process, we're able to make it such that it's still one transaction, and it's not just one transaction. It also enables coin joins between a bunch of different parties. It also doesn't really rely on like interactivity. So I mean, there's definitely, I think, some benefits to being a little more able to, not able, but willing to like, okay, let's start from scratch and figure out how would we do this, like
Let's
from,
implement that at a protocol level.
yeah, at the protocol level, right? So
If
Yeah,
I
I
could
guess
try
I-
to
I guess-
defend the alternative perspective for a second, though.
Can I just jump in and then go for it? I just want to say I think I don't see those two approaches as being in conflict. I think that what Alex is doing is basically like, hey, like here are the tools we have right now. Let's implement. Like my understanding of kind of Alex's approach was like, hey, it seems like a problem that these kind of again what we in Plebnet we call like the sort of for lack of a better term, ghetto submarine swaps, like that is a trustful process. And I think like Alex implemented the kind of, again, like the multi-transaction, the UX is challenging. Like we all kind of had to learn it. And again, Alex is really great about sort of like offering like real-time support on that. But I think that's just basically seeing a need in the short term and then building a system based on the existing tools to solve that problem. And I think what you're doing is basically you're recognizing like, hey, this is something we should be able to do in an even more efficient way.
Yeah,
and
but
then
I want
working
to push back on your timeline there, right? Like the dual funding project's been in process for like a couple of years now. The team that Alex works on, like, it hasn't been, I guess I'm trying to say, like, it hasn't been a surprise that this would be something people want to do. It's definitely been something that at least I've been working on Sea Lightning for quite a while now. It seems that if, like, there's nothing stopping like the L&D team from participating in that spec process and implementing the spec to make it happen at the protocol level. It just seems that there's a, I feel like a little bit of an ideological opinion about what's available and open for change. Like, at what level are we as a community working to make updates?
I mean, I guess
I mean,
don't.
so
ahead.
here's the thing, though, right? Like, I can't necessarily talk so much about the dual funding issue in particular, but I think the value of not going spec first is that for every like 5 use cases you can think of that is that you can get benefits from building something at a deeper protocol level, that, like, you know, maybe only a few of, maybe most of them are transient. Maybe only a few of them end up being sort of permanent fixtures of like, oh, this is the real way we want to do things. And so the value of testing out some of those things early allows you to be able to very cheaply figure out which one any individual use case is. And so with hindsight and history being 2020, we might know that dual funding is clearly something that we wanted for a while, and that there's a significantly better way to do it if we go through the work that you guys at the Sea Lightning team have done. But like, I wonder about all of the alternative scenarios where it's where either dual funding happens to not be one of those things, or all of the other features that you might want, that you realize maybe there's this is just a transient problem, and then doing what I perceive to be much heavier work at the spec level may just not be worth it, given how long that problem ends up lasting, at least in the interactivity of the way that people actually use the Lightning Network.
One example of this might be Keysend, right? That's still not spec, but now it's kind of the base for a whole bunch of applications, and it seems that not every protocol is using Keysend, and consequently it's not on by default.
LNURL, I think, is a very good example. Every wallet is kind of expected to have it. There's lots of its own standards there, and it's not at all part of the protocol. And you wouldn't necessarily want it to be, because it's big and it makes certain compromises that normal Lightning wouldn't make.
Yeah, I think the other thing, Lisa, is that I think, like, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I don't view like the stuff that Alex has built out in Balance of Satoshis as being like an opinion or an approach that is like endorsed by Lightning Labs. I think of that as being, and maybe I'm totally wrong here, and I don't actually know the history, but it seems like that's something that's been built out by Alex specifically because of his own kind of desire to have this functionality. I'm not sure what the official like L&D
that's
or
right.
Lightning Labs position is.
There's no link between any software that I write on the Balance on my own scripts that I run to manage my own nodes, and it's not there's no team of developers working on that at Lightning Labs. It's just what I see. If I see a problem, if I have a problem myself, I write it, and then I believe in open source. So if something that I write can help somebody else do something, and that's something that I do see. So I publish this code. I think I published all the code that I've written for many years, and I start to notice, okay, well, this is being used in El Salvador, and this is being used by companies who are private, and they're just trying to use it internally. That, like, this is being used by people as documentation to figure out how to interact with Lightning Network. So I'm approaching things at that app level, where it's like, I'm trying to just make this stuff work. I'm just trying to run my routing node. I'm just trying to stop people from losing money, with solutions that I can implement right away. I don't get any sign off on anything like that. It's not a Lightning Lab labs product, and it's totally separated from L&D.
Yeah, but I think it definitely, I think if you go to the point of saying like you built it because you're building it because it's tools that people need, it seems like at what point then do you start championing those things being included in the Lightning spec protocol, such that, as I was saying earlier, people don't have to download the balance of Satoshis to get access to those kinds of tools.
That's definitely on purpose. I mean, so, I think the way that you characterized the protocol itself was incorrect, but you admitted yourself that you didn't know how it worked. That's not something that I wanted other people to adopt. And I think that's the difference between protocol and application. So, Twitter, like that we're using now, maybe it runs on the World Wide Web. World Wide Web is a protocol. That's what everybody adheres to. And then there is a protocol between, like our Twitter apps and our Twitter websites and the Twitter servers, but that's a protocol that's internal to them. And that's not something that they're, trying to get everybody to adopt. So that's what I'd say is the difference. At the app level, you can kind of explore different needs. You can explore the market, what problems people have. And when you get to the protocol level, I mean, there's space for both. At the protocol level, you're trying to solve problems for the world. You're trying to create global standards. So I definitely support both of those approaches.
Well put. I'm curious how it plays out. Yeah, I do want to see people free to innovate. And at what point does it become common infrastructure, and what role do application developers have to change their applications into protocols so that it could be more interoperable and the open network as a whole could win out?
Well, I think the open network as a whole wins out regardless, right? I think that the different approaches to solving this problem ultimately allow us to grow and figure out what the best solution is. So I don't think it's a question of one versus the other. I think it's just trying to figure out the best way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I might be far on the other end because Amboss is closed source, and while it is useful, while it is useful, I don't feel the need to make it open source, since my objectives are business. But
I mean, look, in a private conversation, you said that you were keeping it closed source because you hate America. Is that accurate?
that was a private conversation.
No, I'm totally kidding, obviously.
Bitcoiners, let's take a break from the content, and I want to tell you about Coolbix. Coolbix is an awesome Bitcoin hardware wallet that's been around for a really long time. They are building an amazing Bitcoin wallet called the Cool Wallet Pro. The Cool Wallet Pro is state-of-the-art Bitcoin hardware wallet technology. Its form factor is like a credit card. You can put it into your wallet, and it is designed to go with you on the go. So that way, even when you're on the go, you can have the benefit of a two-factor hardware wallet design when you're trying to spend your Bitcoin. So you can have your Bitcoin wallet UX on your phone and make it really easy to scan, decide what you want to do, but then you sign with a CoolBitX, which is in your back pocket. It is tamper-proof, it is waterproof, it is flexible, it has an awesome secure element in it. And it is a really awesome way in order to have some more flexibility, yet security when you're taking your Bitcoin on the go. I personally am a fan of, this idea of making Bitcoin into a medium of exchange and making it into something that people use. I know it's going to take time, but they are working on the UX for making that possible in as secure a way possible. So have some peace of mind. Check out the Cool Wallet Pro from Coolbix. And yeah, thank you to them for sponsoring this podcast. Bitcoiners, I am so excited to tell you about the Bitcoin 2022 conference. You guys, Bitcoin 2021 was absolutely a smash hit success. It was over 13,000 Bitcoiners coming together, breaking the barriers on who can come together and celebrate freedom, celebrate Bitcoin, and the energy was absolutely electric. unfortunately, it was just oversubscribed. There's just people flowing out everywhere. And this year we are learning, we are making the conference bigger and better. We are moving over to the Miami Beach Convention Center, and we are going to be throwing a massive 4-day festival for Bitcoin, celebrating Bitcoin, bringing together the greatest minds in Bitcoin and the greatest businesses in Bitcoin. And lastly, the culture of Bitcoin all together. We have a 4-day extravaganza planned for you guys for Bitcoin 2022. Day one is going to be Industry Day. It is a day where you can buy a special ticket in order to just mingle and make business deals happen. Day 2 and 3 is going to be a full-blown Bitcoin conference. This is our main conference. This is going to be on April 7th and 8th. And then lastly, we have the Sound Music Festival, Day 4. Imagine going to Coachella, but for Bitcoin. There's going to be very few talks. It's going to be all about the culture of Bitcoin. It's going to be all about hanging with your fellow plebs. It is going to be an absolutely amazing time. There's going to be Bitcoin musicians, Bitcoin artists, and all your favorite Bitcoiners, and just an amazing environment to party and just see it all, soak it all in, and to get people to realize that a Bitcoin world, a world filled with Bitcoin people doing Bitcoin things, is the world that they want to live in. That's what Bitcoin 2022 is all about. That is what the Bitcoin conference is all about. That's what Bitcoin Magazine is all about. So it is going to be a celebration of Bitcoin, the Bitcoiners, and this amazing movement that is going to make the world a better place. Go to b.tc/conference, learn more about the Bitcoin conference, learn more about all the amazing things that are happening in Miami around the Bitcoin conference, and buy your tickets. And guess what? If you buy your tickets with Bitcoin, you save $100 on all the tickets and $1,000 on the whale pass. So if you want the VIP pass, the big kahuna, if you buy with Bitcoin, you save $1,000. That's a lot of sats. So go and do it right now today. Don't wait. Prices are only going up. This is going to be a can't miss event.
But I think that makes kind of an interesting point about like how open is open source, right? Like, I mean, clearly there's like closed source software, which is like projects such as Amboss that are like in the dark and no one knows what they are. And then there's projects that are like open source that are like, you know, like I don't even know what maybe like LNTX bot. I think that's open source, I'm guessing here. But like, you know, there's like open source software that kind of doesn't pretend or aspire to be anything other than a piece of software and tools that you can download and like utilize, right? Or like look at the source code and learn how they're written, that sort of thing. And then I think there's like kind of this thing that like you start getting to like protocol and like spec level, the specification level kind of work where it's like we're not just writing open source that anyone can come and look at. We're writing like we're writing recipes for how these things are going to interact, and we're documenting exactly like how they work, such that like multiple pieces of like an open source like community, I guess I should say, can like form around that. And then you have like multiple implementations and stuff. I don't know. It's like, you know, Lightning's like, I'm sure there's like other things, probably like HTTP and like the web protocol stack are probably like the best analogy to kind of what Lightning is attempting to do, which is kind of interesting that like the other analogy is you can't make is Bitcoin, right? Like to me, it's really interesting that Bitcoin isn't specced the same way and to the same like level of granularity that Lightning is. And I think that's like a really interesting thing to like be cognizant of when we're talking about like the spec process that Lightning goes through versus the spec process that the BIPs and Bitcoin go through. And that's because like at the end of the day, the consensus level software that is Bitcoin for the most part is like to large extent is like what Bitcoin Core is, right? Like there's large swaths of consensus critical like code pathways in Bitcoin Core, like this is my understanding, that aren't spec'd anywhere. And there aren't really like there are other implementations of Bitcoin, of like the Bitcoin Core stuff, but most people don't run them because there's no way to like verify that all these consensus critical paths or like interoperable, or like there's like no spec to like check it back against, so to speak, or make sure that they're all speaking the same language. Anyways, yeah, so I just like, I'm sorry, I'm like sort of rambling at this point, but I just think it's like really interesting though that like when you start getting into like this grander theme of like what exactly it means to be like open source, and where does like the spec process fall in that, is like I don't know, it's just like kind of interesting to like compare and contrast the two.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's challenging, right? I mean, I think I don't actually know what Jestopher's like, whether Jestopher has I'm assuming he has an alternative source of income, but I think when one is paid by a larger company to kind of be developing things that allows one freedom to kind of develop these open source projects, I think that is a different situation than someone who is like trying to develop and a separate system and is paying server costs and things like that as some others are. So I know that in my own projects and endeavors and education, like I can afford to take certain risks in terms of the things that I build out as open source versus closed source, because that's not something I need to rely on as a thing that I'm like, quote unquote, like fairly compensated for. So I'm not sure. And I don't know that anybody else is in that situation, but I think about that a lot.
I think we've basically covered like almost like 4 different ways to change the shape of Lightning. We've got Nifty with the protocol advocacy. We've got Alex Bosworth, who's like just pumping out applications. I'm trying to build a business on this thing, and then we've discussed at length Rene Picard's basic like campaign to change some of people's settings across the network. Like 4 completely different approaches to this problem to make this whole system work.
Nifty, can you're in a unique position here because you work for Blockstream to answer some questions that I personally have, and I think other people may have, about Blockstream Green, or not Blockstream Green, but about Greenlight, the new node offering. Would you be comfortable asking a couple questions that I personally have about that project?
Yeah, so honestly, I have been a little bit of arm's length from it. I will
Sorry,
answer
I got
as much as I
disconnected. I'm
can.
assuming everybody else heard everything that Jestopher was saying just now.
Yeah, welcome back, P.
I'm back too.
But yeah, I'd be happy to answer whatever questions that you do have.
Sure. Yeah. One of them was about the availability of it. So when a lot of the press announcements and the press release said like we're launching this and we're rolling it out, and so I was like, oh, this sounds awesome. I can spin up a node basically in the cloud, but I still have the private keys. I want to go play with this. So I went to the website to look for a download section, or if not download, like click a button to deploy or whatever. And what I found was like a message that was like, if you're a corporation that's interested in using this as part of your infrastructure, please contact us. And it was like, wait, this isn't for plebs to play with? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, man, I know that like there was like at some point internally, someone shared a website that was basically, I'm gonna get this wrong, it was like a copy of basically it would let you spin up a Lightning node in your browser, in the browser. I don't exactly know how it works. So I've definitely seen something that does what I would assume is like what you're looking for, kind of like a GUI where you like click a button and it spins up a node. But I think the answer to your question about like wanting, and I'm sort of imagining like kind of like Google Cloud provider, I think the GCP has like kind of a dashboard where you can like spin up nodes, or like AWS, you can like pick nodes and like spin them up and like see them. I think the answer is that we don't have like I think that eventually at some point that's definitely something we want to let people be able to do, but it's so early right now. We don't even have like those levels of dashboards built that would make it possible for you to do what I'm guessing you want your experience to be like.
Cool. Yeah. It's yeah. If there are if you guys are still building out the infrastructure to support, or perhaps I misinterpreted it. My impression was that what it is for is so that you can deploy a node and in the cloud without giving it your public or without giving it your private keys. So that any transactions you want to make, you still have the private keys to sign or disapprove of those. But all of the backend stuff, all of the hard things that go into channel management and node running and chain synchronization and graph synchronization are all handled by this cloud infrastructure. Or at least that was my impression of what Greenlight was for. But maybe I misinterpreted it, or what are your thoughts? What's your take on what it's for?
I think that's correct.
I think that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, is that Vivek? Go ahead, Vivek.
That's correct. I think right now we're trying to nail down, I guess, the offering itself, as in like how it's going to work. That's why we've partnered with Striga, previously known as Lastbit, and Sphinx to really nail down the experience, and then perhaps open it up to the masses. We don't want to just kind of throw it out there in the wild already. So yeah, TBD. Appreciate the enthusiasm. Sorry you went to the website and it wasn't quite what you were expecting yet.
Yeah, no problem. And I apologize, Vivek. I didn't know you worked for Blockstream. I thought Nifty was the only one in this chat who did that. I also wondered if you guys could compare it to the way, if you know anything about the way Electrum did their Lightning implementation. I recall some of the narrative around that being that their Electrum servers would handle a lot of the difficult stuff that goes into running a node. Including watchtowers, like the Electrum personal server or the Electrum X server now, I believe, has a Lightning watchtower built in, so that users of the Electrum Lightning implementation don't have to run one, and instead they can rely on the watchtower on the servers to do that. So I don't. That's about all I know about. But that impression jumped to my mind when I read the press release about Greenlight. I was like, oh, that's kind of like what Electrum was doing, where they're letting their servers do the hard stuff, and then your client can do the easy stuff about running a node. Do you know anything more about that, or if that played into any of your conversation at all?
I just want to jump in really quick. Does Geeselight sound like Ultron to anyone else? Like the sort of like going back and forth between being like a compassionate human and also like a super deep voiced robot?
So one thing that I want to say is I've been struggling with the Twitter space demons this entire time, and this is like the first time I can hear everyone clearly. So so like he sounds good to me, but like this is like the first time where everyone sounds good to me, P. So I don't know. If you're the one struggling now, I think at least one person on stage has to struggle. So why don't you just take the cross for a little bit? Because I'm enjoying this now. And I also had a question.
I want to be clear. It sounds amazing. Yeah. I feel intimidated by the kind of like the deep.
No, he sounds normal.
Coming from. Okay, that's just me then. Well, I also just want to say that Vivek, Lisa, I reached out to you, Vivek, and asked for sort of early access to Greenlight, and I just want to let you know that I do feel kind of personally attacked that you haven't been able to give me access to it yet, along with So please do what you can to speed that along.
This is quite a way to cut the line, P. But sure,
No. I'm just fucking with you. Yeah, do your thing. But I am super excited about it. I think it's a really important...
Okay, yeah. So I want to just like quick question to y'all who are so excited about Greenlight, which is awesome, but also like why, like I guess like what is your like I just want to hear like your use case. So like clearly with like I guess Strega and Sphinx Chat, like they have like kind of a use case in an app like that they're trying to scale with like a bunch of users on Lightning, and so like for them, they're really great. Greenlight, their use of Greenlight is like pretty understandable, I think. But like for like Y'all are like more, I'm guessing small scale, and like total apologies if you're not.
How dare
But
you?
yeah, I'd love to hear more about like what you want to use Greenlight for.
Lisa, I'm offended, and once again, I feel attacked. No, but the answer is that I run a couple physical Lightning nodes, and running a couple LND and Clarence Lightning, and I'm really excited about the idea of people who are interested in Lightning being able to spin up Lightning nodes without having to concern themselves with the complication of building their own physical hardware and their internet connection and all of the associated the problems that are I should say the barriers to entry that are potentially there. I think that running your own physical hardware is super important from a decentralization perspective, but I think that tools like Greenlight and Michael Tidwell, who it sounds like has for the first time been able to join us on the stage and actually know what's
Yes.
going on, is building a set of Terraform. You told me this a second ago, Michael. I apologize.
Yeah, so like the idea is
Terraform brainjacks, Terraform programs that you install directly into your brain via the computer chip that was put there by Bill Gates. Is that fair?
that was almost a perfect explanation. Terraform modules that
Modules.
the idea is if you don't want to run it in Kubernetes, if you want something that's a little bit more VM based, this is what I'm aiming for people that want to deploy their stuff in a more VM stateful kind of way, and less Kubernetes way.
So again, it's the kind of the computer chip that was put in your brain, by Bill Gates when the 5G turned on. That's going to allow you to run the Terraform modules. And again, in case you don't know my sense of humor, I am totally joking. These are super important systems that are being built out. But to answer your question, Lisa, I think that being able to virtualize a Lightning node while still maintaining custody of your own keys is a really, really powerful educational and teaching tool. And it allows people to basically explore that, what it is to running a Lightning node, what it means to be able to route payments, how to manage your channels and balance them without having to deal with all of the level of commitment that is required to buy a bunch of hardware that you may or may not feel comfortable with, and then set it up, and then invest, and then kind of do all that stuff. I think it's really cool. I hope that will lead to people, also I will say, I think that the cost, I don't know what the cost structure is planned to be for Greenlight, but I think the idea of being able to run a node for, tens of dollars versus having to, a Lightning node that is, versus having to commit to, $250, $350 in one, kind of pass. That's a way more approachable thing for most people to be able to be like, well, I can fuck around with this for, $10 to $15 or less or whatever it is, and then kind of figure out if I actually want to run a Lightning node. That's a compelling idea for me.
Yeah, and I think one cool thing about Greenlight that makes that I think even cooler is that my understanding is that the eventual goal is that you would be able to migrate. So, you could start out with a node on Greenlight and then migrate it to like your own infrastructure later because, you do own the keys. And I think there's a way to make it exportable. I'd have to like check again with what Christian's done, but I know that's definitely a thing that he wants to do and is working towards making possible. So cool. Okay, so we've heard from P that he wants Greenlight to help onboard and like give more people access to Lightning in like a super lightweight way. I don't think we heard from the other person who originally asked the question yet.
Yeah, one of the projects that I frequently help out with is LN Bits. Which is among other things, it is a plugin infrastructure for Lightning nodes, and it allows anyone to create it has a bunch of plugins that you can use to make your node do all sorts of cool tricks. And in the support channel for that. One of the common difficulties people have, or a reason that puts them off from trying it out, is spinning up a node. They're like, it takes too long, or it's too complicated, or it's hard to do. And what we would really like, I mean, LNbits is designed to support a bunch of different backends. You can use C-Lightning, you can use LND as a backend, you can use LNTXBot or LNPay or OpenNode or a couple of other ones. But what we'd really like is to have a funding method that's just a button. You click a button and there's your funding method, but also non-custodial. And that seems like one promising avenue toward that is this Greenlight thing, or at least they make it sound like it's a one-click deployment. And so we'd love to create an extension or something for LNbits where to set it up, you just click a button and now you've got your node backend, and they'll take care of all the hard stuff and let your LNbits just do the fun stuff. So that's where I'm coming from in looking forward to seeing something like this come to fruition.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
My question is Greenlight going to be better supported than Green Wallet?
Ooh, sick burn.
Just kidding.
Vivek.
Just kidding.
Vivek, do you want to take that one?
I also someone at Blockstream.
All right, continue. Someone at Blockstream.
Someone at Blockstream obviously loves the color green. That's all I gotta say about that.
I wonder if they're like colorblind and all they can see is green, and that's kind of the deep-seated.
Well, Green Wallet
structure.
Originally was Green Address, started by Lawrence Nahum, and it was acquired by Blockstream. So
yes, I was just throwing shade.
No, I'm saying like if you were guessing someone really likes green, then it might be Lawrence.
Yeah, I mean, okay, like not to like give away too much here, but I feel like the name kind of explains like what the eventual, or like what kind of the origin story of Greenlight is, and like where that might be going as a product at some point, if that makes sense, or like kind of the ambitions for that in the long term. I don't know. Maybe that's like too abstract of a hint. That's why it's
foreshadowing for us. I love it.
What I'm taking away from this, Lisa, is the 5G. 5G is going to put Greenlight directly into our brains, and we need to protect the children. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, you should all definitely be sleeping in Faraday cages if you aren't already. I don't know.
I mean, I obviously am. I sleep in a chicken wire mesh that I custom built that covers my entire body. I only get about an hour and a half of sleep a night because it's really uncomfortable and it is electrified. But we all make sacrifices.
The only problem is the Faraday cage. If you already have the signals in there, they just bounce around and zap you all night. So that's probably why you're not getting the right amount of sleep.
No, it's the current. I got to figure it out. Right now, whenever my body touches the edges of the cage, I get electrocuted and it wakes me up. But moving on to more important topics.
Like Pete, that sounds like a you problem, man. That really sounds like a you problem.
Hey Pete, before you jump to another topic, there's something that Lisa brought up earlier that my shit wasn't working earlier, so I didn't want to drop it too far away. If you don't mind, if I could follow up on something previous that we've talked about real quick.
I'll allow it, but know that if this topic does not bear fruit, I will hold you accountable.
Sure. Yeah, we can. If this isn't something we want to talk about, we can skip to the next topic. But Lisa, I feel like you. Oh yeah. The problem is I swear to God, I could only hear like every third word, and it was terrible. But I kind of was making out what you were talking about with Alex earlier, and it was a kind of interesting back and forth you both were having. I wanted to maybe just ask a quick follow-up question, which was, I feel like Lisa brings up a pretty valid criticism or point, which is I feel like L&D right now, and I'm not saying you were saying this, Lisa, this is just kind of like what I was putting together in my head, but I feel like L&D right now is essentially the reference implementation of Lightning, whether you like it or not. And with that being said, anything that L&D does that's pretty, interesting or drastic is going to more or less be part of not maybe the official protocol, but this protocol that abstract higher level, application protocol that people are actually using day to day. And I mean, I think one of these things And I would love to be schooled on this if someone wants to dunk on me after this, but it's like the boss score, which started out completely, with Alex, not related to anything that L&D was kind of supporting natively, or Lightning Labs was supporting, but now is like something that people are really, really focused on with their nodes, is getting like a high, a Lightning terminal score and stuff like this. And it's almost like essentially becoming part of the protocol, I feel. And I would love for someone to dunk on me and tell me why I'm wrong about this, but I feel like this could, as like maybe these scores are maybe important and very useful, to be honest. And then also, allow for these application layers and stuff to be useful as well, almost like a liaison kind of thing. I feel like there could also be like potentially a slippery slope where something is introduced and now it's like disenfranchises the other implementations. I don't know if that sparks any conversation, but between what you guys were talking about, but those are the things I was thinking of.
Yeah, I think like to some extent the spec is only as good as like the work that we as implementation teams like put into it, right? So like it's like when you're like you were saying, like sometime, if L&D implements something and they ship it to everyone that uses L&D, since they do have more users on the network than any of the other node implementations, like that does create, I think, some pressure for the other implementations to figure out what they've done and make it such that their users can also use those tools. But again, that kind of goes back to like writing it down, making it a spec so that like everyone's playing off of like the same, knows what they're like, how to like do follows or whatever, right? The nice thing about writing what you're doing down also means that you get more eyes on it and you get more opportunity for people to like point out problems, give feedback, maybe do a little bit of like what color is the bike shed of that like type of thing. But I mean the whole idea about having a spec and having a written down explanation that anyone can come up and look at and see how that's working, is that it allows us all to kind of make sure that we're all on the same page with stuff as it goes. And yeah, like that's a process that like requires the people who are building the platform to kind of all chip in and like do collaboratively. And if if we're not all collaborating together on that kind of stuff, then it does kind of lead to things where things aren't even and things can't talk to each other, or there's like problems and that sort of thing between implementations that like don't totally work. I don't know. I mean, writing down what you're doing and explaining it so that other people can repeat it is like kind of the whole point of any sort of specification process. And I think there's a lot of value in that, but it is a lot of work. I think is kind of what that goes back to. And it's work that isn't necessarily gonna make your project more successful in the long term. It just makes Lightning more successful in the long term.
So one thing I do just want to give Alex or Jestopher or Ryan.
I see Ryan's on the stage now. Yeah.
A chance to sort of weigh in and express their thoughts. Alex, is there anything you want to kind of like?
Alex is gone on my screen.
Oh, yep, he is to me as well.
Because
I'll take the handoff.
Hit it.
Because I think it's like we're just in this really exciting and really interesting space for Lightning, where this process that was put in place, the bolts, right? I think it's 2.5 years ago, something like that, has worked like exceedingly well, right? We've had, to my knowledge, I don't think any really, huge thefts. We haven't had like any like massive network-wide outages. Like by all measurements, right? The growth of Lightning for the last 3 years has been like dramatically successful. And I think a really large amount of that is due to all of the rigor that went into the spec that Lisa described, all of the teams collaborating and working together, and building something and prioritizing, the Lightning Network as a whole, and over any one company's ambitions or anything like that. And I think that's like, I don't think there's anybody in the ecosystem, that would disagree about that, even though Bitcoiners by nature are, of course, very disagreeable. So I want to start off by saying that for sure, just in being very explicit. Where I think we're running into problems now is like this process is just having trouble scaling, right? It's having, as the ecosystem grows, and as it's not just the three client teams that are building, the Lightning Network as a whole, but now there are companies like ZEBEDEE, there are companies like Amboss, there are, companies like Strike, there's Bitcoin Beach, like, you just go down the list, right? There's hundreds of companies now that are building on the Lightning Network protocol, not just the three client teams. And not all of them are really interested in doing spec work, right? Like, they're not interested in waiting for two of the client teams to test a new feature, make sure it's interoperable, and then allow them to release their feature to their users. Like, they want the ability to proceed independent of the protocol and like have a clean separation between what should be a protocol like TCP/IP that just works. It's very thin. It doesn't have like a lot of bells and whistles. It just does one thing and does it really well, right? They want that as a layer upon which to build an application to delight their users with, right? And so, I think like LNURL is like just, it's the canonical example of something that, the people working on the spec, right, for many reasons, didn't think it was really like the clean way, didn't think it was the best way, told themselves they would get around to building something better that's more kind of Lightning native. And now, like, you look at where we are now, and LNURL is like probably the default way in every wallet that people interact with the Lightning protocol, right? And so I think it's just one of those things where, we're struggling to find the limits of where the spec, which should be prescriptive, which should say, in order to count yourself as like a Lightning client, you have to do things this way. And then something that is descriptive, that is saying, if you are complying with the Lightning standards, here are some additional things that you can do, right? I think trying to find that line is what, if there is an argument or disagreement here, it's defining exactly where that line is, right? What are things that are Lightning features that are great that you can opt into if you'd like, and it would be nice if a lot of wallets supported them, and what are things that, in order to consider yourself like on the Lightning Network, you have to handle these things in this certain way, right? And I think it's just, the bizarre approach, and that's bizarre with two A's, not two Z's. The bizarre approach to kind of application development, where we're letting a million flowers bloom, we're letting people experiment, we're letting them iterate to try and find out what features users really like. Is just, now that we have a stable protocol, now that it's been 3 years, and like, we have interoperability on the network layer, letting the app layer experiment, find out what are the things that people really like, and kind of, help guide some new feature development seems like a really good deal, rather than trying to force them to wait for new features until the client teams can agree on like prioritizing things. And so I think that, that's where it's just trying to find a balance there, because what we've noticed obviously is like, they're not going to ask permission or like wait for the client teams. What they're going to do instead is they're just going to innovate. They're going to build things. They're not going to write them down. And they're going to, yell at me for not supporting them yet, because it's been, a year since they posted on the mailing list, and LND still hasn't merged zero-conf channels, for instance, right? Because we were waiting on the spec. And so it's one of those things where finding the ecosystem is scaling. We had a process that is 100% earned the credit and the respect of everybody involved for getting us to this point. We don't want to change the existing process at all. All we want to do is now recognize that there is this much bigger, broader ecosystem out here that is not involved in the process and does not care to be prescribed features. They want to experiment and they want to describe those features. And if those features are deemed like consensus critical, so to speak, if they need to be prescribed, they should be prescribed into the spec. But otherwise, we should allow there to be some way for the app developers to communicate in like a standardized manner about what new features they're adding, why they did it, and like how to write it yourself if you'd like to.
Yeah, so I want to I actually think you pointed, I think there's a lot of things that you mentioned there, but one that I think is really interesting and kind of goes with this really amazing book that I picked up recently. So I just started reading this book called The Elements of Networking Style. It's by a guy named Michael Padlipsky, and he actually worked on the original ARPANET project. He was a member of the basically U.S. government team that was building out the original protocols that now we know of as the internet. And it's funny because this book I'm reading again, it's called The Elements of Networking Style, is kind of this tongue-in-cheek kind of difficult to read screed against how protocol development kind of matured and changed after the original ARPANET, and how TCP packets would be put together, how that spec process sort of devolved over the years. And one of his biggest criticisms about how the specs started being written after a couple decades or whatever of existing is that they moved from what was a descriptive style into what Ryan was calling a prescriptive style. And he was saying that's absolutely not the way to go. I don't know. I just thought it's funny because it's not something I had really ever thought about until I started reading this book last week. But it's funny to hear you basically advocating for the thing that this very early protocol developer is really explicit about in this book he's written, where he's that is definitely not the way you should move on your protocol development stuff. Sorry to I know that's kind of a
well, hold on, because you said it. No, because he said the wrong way to go is to move towards prescriptive.
That's right. Yeah.
What the bold process is right now, it's prescriptive.
No, it's descriptive, yo. It's very descriptive.
No, well, it says it's prescriptive because if you don't comply with the spec, then you're out of compliance. You have to do it this way. It is prescribed.
No, but that's a description of how it works. Well, whatever. All right. Maybe prescriptive and descriptive aren't necessarily the most descriptive terms. But as a goal, I think that I agree that we should it should be descriptive, and that it describes how exactly the protocol should work, and explain exactly what steps we should take. Mm-hmm. And that is a description of how it works, rather than, I think prescriptive is more goal oriented and kind of what outcome featured is, so to speak. Anyways,
no, I don't know. I'm pretty certain about the definition of prescriptive, and it's saying in order to comply with a feature, this is how it's prescribed. This is how you must handle an HTLC when it's being forwarded. Whereas descriptive is, if you would like to accept a zero-conf channel, this is how we as Breeze or Moon or Async or something like that, this is the description of how we do it. But you don't have to do that if you don't like to.
I think you're basically saying that interoperability should not be a goal, I feel like.
No. That's not it. That's not it at all. It's that there are some things that in order for the network to be interoperable, this is what I'm saying, is that there are some things that I absolutely agree should be in the spec, right? How to forward an HTLC, every Lightning node should handle that exactly the same way. There should be no ambiguity about it, right? And the hard thing that I think, as an ecosystem, we're a little bit struggling with here is the line between what are the things that must be handled a certain way by everybody in order to maintain interoperability for the very important reason that anybody can spin up a new client and write their own thing and be able to interoperate with the network. And then what are things that can proceed independently and are not like a must for interoperability? Like I think like we totally agree, Lisa, on like the things that are required for interoperability, that they should be written and created in the way that like things have been done. And I'm again, I feel like I've been very explicit that like the existing build process has done a very good job and it works really well. And we're not trying to change the way that new, like, you know, mission critical, interoperability critical features get added. And I don't think anybody has advocated for that. It's just simply saying that there is this new class of features that do not require interoperability that are being developed already externally, extra protocol.
Okay,
right?
but if
And we should just have a place for them to be written down.
If they don't require interoperability, I don't understand why there would be a need to write that down. If it's not something that needs to interoperate, then sure, like go off and do the thing that doesn't need to interoperate. Like you're not going to contribute. That's not going to be like an open specification process though. And I think we're both on the same page in terms of like, if you want things to be repeatable, if you want people to adopt your stuff, you should write it down and put it somewhere like that it's in a spec level process. And like, whether that's something like where that lives, you know, like more of those documents existing, I think, and being written by the people that developing the software would be great. I don't think anyone would I don't think it would be a net detraction if more people started publishing how they're doing things. Like
exactly.
I think that sounds like a great idea.
And that's really like literally just that, what you just said is the perfect description of what we're trying to achieve. Because like we have this ecosystem of developers that are building on LND that are just, they're like, well, like, yeah, you know, like we kind of tried, you know, the mailing list once or twice, like we like thought about joining, you know, the Lightning Dev meeting, but saw that like the agenda was slammed. Like we're just going to go off and build it ourselves. And like, you know, if we need help from you, like we'll ask, rather than it being like a very open, like, look, if you have a proposal, or a description of a new thing that you're doing and you'd like to get eyes on it, like just write it in this repo. Here's this like nice standard format that works not just for Bitcoin, you know, not just for Ethereum and like tons of other general crypto projects. It works for Python, right? Like this improvement proposal process is like, you know, pretty battle tested. Just write it down, drop it, and, you know, maybe you'll get some feedback, maybe you won't. Maybe people will adopt it, maybe they won't, but at least it'll be documented. And like, here's a way to make it easy for you to do that.
So I wanna give the other people that are up here a chance to sort of like weigh in. Like, what are your thoughts? I think this is a super important conversation, and I don't know. I just feel really appreciative, Lisa, that you were able to jump in. I know I messaged you on the side and was like, get in here, and Ryan, JC, Vivek, Jestopher. What are your thoughts, Michael?
One thing that comes to mind after Ryan, I love what you said about this ecosystem is maturing rapidly, almost too fast. So
wait, what
so
does
like
too fast mean?
It's that like any of these like protocol developments, like commercialization is happening like really rapidly. There's businesses building on this protocol like at a time that the protocol is still somewhat in its infancy. Like it should be expected to change, and as the protocol expands, like the pieces that it actually has contained within the protocol, like as that protocol grows, like that might mean that it destroys business cases, because what Lisa was saying earlier is, as part of like protocol development, you're basically making this conversation between multiple parties. You're turning it into an optimized conversation. Like you're only saying what absolutely needs to be said, which might eliminate business cases where like businesses are solving problems, or for their customers, reducing complexity, or, you know, trying to streamline this issue that their customers might be experiencing. And so when a protocol makes a development, it might be a little bit concerning because now you have businesses that were solving that issue before, but now it's part of the protocol, it's optimized, and now your business case is finished. So I don't know, like, of course, like Lightning businesses have to stay ahead of the curve. If you're developing apps, you're going to have to be prepared to make big changes to this. At the same time that even the base layer is changing. Taproot is around the corner, so lots of changes ahead. So very interesting time and super cutting edge. And sometimes that might be a little bit painful as protocols move in to business cases.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's definitely kind of a tension between, this, like, what is the current state of the different implementations and what features they offer now versus like what the plan is to change in the future, and how there are maybe some gaps right now they're getting filled in and that at some point might get infrastructuralized, I guess, out and away. But I need to hop off here, guys. But this is a really great chat. P, thanks for pulling me up here, kicking and screaming to chat. I wanted to do a short shout out to any lady specifically. Sorry, gents, you're not allowed. But if you're a lady Lightning node operator and you would like to hang out in a witchy lady chat, we've been opening channel pentagrams for fun and maybe some profit. Send me a DM and I will add you to our little Lightning Witch chat that we've got going on over on Telegram. Yeah.
I love it. I think thank you so much for joining us. And I think that's super important. I think that showing everyone that this is not a space for one specific group of people, and there's Bitcoin and Lightning is for everybody is so important. I hope, I don't know if you have already, but I would definitely recommend, and I'll encourage her to reach out to you as well. But Aaron Malone is who just wrote a Bitcoin magazine piece is totally amazing, and I'd encourage you to reach out and you guys to connect.
Yeah, dope. Okay, cool. All right, bye friends. Talk to you later.
Adios.
Bye.
Good stuff. What do y'all think? We've been going for about 2.5 hours. Good solid chat. Honestly, I can I can talk about Lightning for days. I'm down to keep going, but I want to ask the speakers who are up on stage. Are there other things that y'all want to dive into? You feeling like you want to close it out? Ryan, Vivek, JC, Jestopher.
I'm happy to keep going. I just freed up some time. I was on a couple calls earlier, but I like what Ryan said about the ecosystem has grown. Lightning Labs has definitely done a great job fostering that early community in their Slack group. I remember seeing the OG days when it was just Jack Maulers in there, and you actually, you get Alex Bosworth for the most part. Now it's so many people, but we did run into CVEs and stuff like that in 2019 that were really bad, but we made it through that too. So it hasn't been I guess perfect, but it's been good.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's always going to be bugs, and yeah, those CVEs in 2019 were definitely not very. But I meant on the network level, right? I think I saw a stat yesterday that there's been $400 million in DeFi exploits this year.
Oh damn!
We're a lot fucking better than that, right?
Yeah.
let's remember here that we're mostly all on the same team, and there are these yahoos next door building their casino and just stealing from people left and right. So we're definitely doing a lot better job than they are.
It is so wild to hear, just the everything that's happened that just continues to happen on Ethereum, where the idea, miner extracted value is just the craziest fucking thing to me. That basically that was kind of published as like, hey, this is an exploit. It's fucked up. And then the Ethereum Foundation and everyone involved was like, no, 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 no. It's a feature, not a bug. You should get fucked by miners. It's part of the process. That just is insane to me. And I talk about this a lot, but I think one of the things that's so compelling to me about Bitcoin, and of course the Lightning Network, which is built on top of Bitcoin, is that the incentives there are not only are these incredibly robust protocols, and they, the Lightning Network is still in development. We're still figuring this stuff out as we've been talking about today, but that the incentives are really, really powerful, and they're really nuanced, and they allow us to both, succeed as individuals, and also succeeding as individuals means succeeding as a larger community. And I think that's a really, really unique thing about Bitcoin. And it certainly does not exist in any of the other shitcoins that are out there. And it's an amazing thing. It's pretty remarkable.
I don't think there's a shitcoin that we could necessarily build ZEBEDEE on, for example, because when you're dealing with so many transactions and you need a blockchain that can really, or rather a protocol that can really scale, you don't want a blockchain. And that's one of my favorite things about Lightning is that there's no global state. There isn't a blockchain. It's backed by a blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain, which is amazing. Obviously, billions of dollars of infrastructure and probably more computing power than any other thing in the world, or any even probably if you took the Bitcoin computing power, I don't think all the other computing power that exists would match it for any other thing combined. So yes, it's backed by a blockchain, but itself does not use a blockchain, and that's why it's able to scale while still letting you be in control of your private keys and not making that what I feel like is the biggest compromise.
JC, I thought when you were going to say you couldn't imagine ZEBEDEE being built on using any other blockchain, I thought you were going to say because if we used a different blockchain, everyone would just immediately quit, and that's why it wouldn't work.
Oh no, I'm sure there are plenty of people that would love it. I mean, I get messages all the time like, "Why don't we make a token?" Or people asking, "Hey, what blockchain do you guys do your game logic on? Like, which blockchain do you use for the games to run?" And I'm like, "We don't run our games on blockchains because that would be stupid."
I feel like that's one of those situations where you kind of, if you're meeting in person, you kind of like bring them in. You're like, hey, come closer, come closer. I have something to whisper to you. And then you just slap them. And you're like, that's what you get for asking.
Yo, JC,
terrible question.
You want me to like 10x your sales right away?
What?
All you gotta say is
recommend a token?
Infuse is a blockchain. It has a database,
Yeah.
and then you're done. Like, so your company's gonna get acquired immediately.
Oh God, yeah. Just be like, but what blockchain is it? Look, don't worry about it. Do not worry about the answer to that question. It doesn't matter. The point is,
Or just
blockchain.
always say yes, P. Whenever they say, you just always say yes. Is this running on a blockchain? Yes.
Yes,
Is this Counter-Strike?
this is an append-only database. Yes.
Hey, I have a question for Brian.
Go for it.
Is there at BitBlock Boom last year? You guys, I was speaking with you about some of the things that are going on in LND's development, and one of the things that I thought sounded really cool. You mentioned something about developing I thought you said you're about to release a plugin architecture for LND. Was that released, or has there been any movement on that, or what can you tell us about? I mean, people. It seems like people have mostly decided to write wrappers around LND, which provides largely the same functionality, but a lot of people like plugins. Is there any movement on that?
Yeah, no, that was me just being dumb and not really understanding the tech all that well. I think what I was alluding to was like, if you look at how we've packaged up like the litd Lightning Terminal repo, right? Which is like LND plus loopd plus poold plus Faraday, like it all runs as one blob. Like I was envisioning, like app developers could develop, like kind of like what you said, like their own little wrapper, their own little daemon that has, the ability to get a macaroon from LND itself, and then hit certain APIs and make like kind of higher level calls. That's what I was alluding to. It is definitely, I think, now that I have a better understanding of actually how C Lightning's plugin architecture works. Ours is definitely different, and definitely like it still has to be, you know, a separate process that's running, that's hitting L&D, as far as I know. But I'm probably not the best person to answer that question.
Ryan, people love gRPC too, right? Like that's they rave about that. So I don't necessarily know that like C Lightning. Yeah, you're right. Definitely is plugin focused, but like I think a lot of people really appreciate the way L&D is done also.
Yeah, for sure. I certainly have been. I certainly enjoy the gRPC interface as well. There's something magical about writing a plugin where a command that you wrote shows up on the console when you do the, you know, C Lightning help command, and you're like, oh, my command is there now. You know, it feels cool. But yeah, the wrappers can do the same things though, so that's nice.
Yeah. So sorry for shilling a little out of turn. I hope to see you at BitBlock again this year, here in a couple weeks.
You going, Ryan?
I'll be there.
I made it.
Yeah,
I figured it out.
My man.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. Vivek, you going to be there?
No, I canceled.
God
I'm kidding.
damn it.
Yeah,
I'm so excited.
it's gonna be so fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to be there for the whole week. Hit me up.
All right, folks.
All right.
I'm going to go get some food. But great chatting with everybody. Thanks, Bitcoin Mag, for hosting.
Yeah,
See you, Ryan.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Thanks for
thank you
jumping
so
in.
much for hosting. See you at BitBlock Boom.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, I think I'm going to wind it down, close it out. It's been a great chat.